Greetings, lovely people, and welcome to Fast Track 4. Today we're going to be talking about the first episode of the Book of Boba Fett. And, spoilers ahead, we are going to be just discussing in full the events of A Stranger in a Strange Land. And, roll that intro. So, this has been a really interesting one for me. I was not overly interested in the Book of Boba Fett. It's definitely something that I've been looking forward to. You know, I like to have my fill of Star Wars, and especially with the fact that we haven't had any films in a good while now. I was looking forward to just having something now that, the animated stuff is kind of over for a bit. And also Marvel stuff. We have a little break, so, I was not... Okay, excited's the wrong word. I was interested in this, I was looking forward to it, and I was definitely going to see it when it released on Disney+. It just wasn't necessarily something that I was really, had in my calendar and was really, up bright and early to watch it. And that is largely because, as much as, Mandalorians are great, Mandalorians are really cool, The Mandalorian is an amazing show in my opinion, I really enjoyed it. Boba Fett is just not a character I've ever had too much interest in. I've always seen him for what he is, really, which is a bit of a blathering buffoon that doesn't really do much other than look cool, and quite honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. Films having characters that are basically exist just to be cool is perfectly fine. The fact, though, that people are so infatuated with him is really odd to me, and it has been since the start. I was very excited to see that he had returned, that he was actually alive in The Mandalorian, but I was by no means really caring too much whether he, continued past that series or whether he'd just be another side character in future Mandalorian series or seasons, should I say. But yeah, this episode was interesting. So it has flashbacks to how Boba actually escaped the Sarlacc pit, which is really interesting. I do think there's a slight continuity error of there being a stormtrooper in the Sarlacc pit, because Jabba wouldn't have had any stormtroopers. He didn't like the Empire, he was against it, and realistically, why would a regular stormtrooper, mind you, not a sand trooper, a regular stormtrooper, why would they venture out so far into the desert that they would fall into the Sarlacc pit? I don't know, it's something that a lot of parodies did. I remember Robot Chicken, when they did their Boba Fett escapes the Sarlacc pit, skit, they also had a stormtrooper down there, and, it makes sense, I suppose, for stormtroopers to be on Tatooine, except for the fact that we've seen that they're not, especially around the time of Episode 6, stormtroopers weren't really there. There were sandtroopers, definitely, we see them in Episode 4, but, yeah, it just felt like such a weird inconsistency, and also, the purpose of the stormtrooper being there was essentially just so that Boba could get oxygen, which I don't think was a requirement. I was certainly not thinking, oh, how is he breathing inside the Sarlacc? It's it's a living creature. I can perfectly understand that there would be enough oxygen to be able to breathe inside it. He wasn't getting compressed or anything, so it wasn't that wasn't an issue. And how he escapes is just kind of odd. It looks interesting. It's very visually interesting, but he breaks through the inner lining of the presumably the stomach. I don't really know the anatomy of a Sarlacc, but I assume it's like the stomach lining, and he just burns the inside of the Sarlacc with his flamethrower. Which, I mean, yeah, fair enough. That's perfectly reasonable. I'm fine with that. And then he digs his way out through the Sarlacc and then through the sand. I didn't mind that. I thought it was a little bit far-fetched to think that he could dig through the desert from under the sand, but it's not something I'm going to complain too much about. For the most part, I have no issue with them showing it this way. I just think it's a little bit nonsensical in a way that is a little bit distracting, even for Star Wars. I know Star Wars is fantasy. It's more fantasy than most sci-fi in a lot of ways. And generally I do accept it, especially the animated stuff I allow to get away with a lot of really ridiculous things. But yeah, when it comes to live action stuff, I like to keep a bit of a level head, and I call it Star Trek logic of, it's the realism aspect needs to still be there. If you're going to, have this fantasy world work, it kind of has to have some logical, connection, some basic physics in use, and I don't know, to me, the Escape from the Sarlacc just seemed a bit nonsensical, and yeah, it's going to be different for everybody. I didn't personally think it was great, but there's going to be some people that think that is the best scene in the entire episode, so, I'll leave that up to you guys to decide, but I wasn't a huge fan. When it comes to the, current day, quote-unquote events, the Mandalorian timeline events, we basically see that, Boba Fett has taken over Jabba's palace, as we saw at the end of The Mandalorian, and he is, just being a crime boss, doing the basic things. He's getting money and tributes and whatever else from the local businesses, and he's going around talking to his constituents and stuff, getting messages from the mayor, and that does set up a few things where the mayor doesn't actually go to Boba himself. The mayor sends an aide. The aide doesn't have a tribute for Boba, but requests a tribute from Boba for the mayor, which becomes a bit of an issue for Boba. And, I feel like that's going to go somewhere during the rest of the series, but in this episode it just doesn't really go anywhere as far as I'm concerned. And then, as I say, Boba continues on his day, goes around. He is making a point that he doesn't want to be carried around by his Gamorreans, like what Bib Fortuna and Jabba the Hutt would have been, which I feel like is kind of inaccurate for Jabba, because we see him, whenever he's not in the palace, he's usually just sliming around, he's I don't think we ever see him getting carried around, or even just travelling in a vehicle. I know we see Zero the Hutt in the Clone Wars have that happen. Is carried around and travels on speeders and stuff. But like, I don't know. For the most part, I don't get why they made such a big deal out of Boba not getting carried around by the Gamorreans, but. It is what it is. He travels around, talks to a few of his constituents. There's a bar, which I don't believe is supposed to be the bar from A New Hope, but could be. It's hard to tell, really. It's just an interesting little scene. It's Boba just interacting with people, and then he's attacked by a bunch of presumably mayoral guards that have electric shields and electric batons. And it's a pretty good fight scene. It's nothing special by any means, but, I enjoy watching Morrison fight. He is really cool. His movements are really nice. I really like his fighting style that he uses for Boba. And, generally, it's all entertaining. Fennec Shan, great in this entire episode. I really do love that character. And, just overall, it's a good fighting scene. There's a nice chase that follows. And we have a bunch, in fact, I didn't mention it at the start, but this episode starts with Boba in a Bacta tank, and that's kind of how it ends. He ends, in a Bacta tank, showing that Boba isn't, indestructible. And I kind of like that because, we've come off of 2 seasons of The Mandalorian where, he can just shrug off blaster bolts. It's kind of fun to see a Mandalorian that's actually, damageable, especially one that holds so much power, in terms of, he's Lord Fett, he owns Jabba's palace now, he's a crime lord, he's all these, really powerful positions are his. It's really interesting that we also get to see how fragile he truly is, and we get to see in the backstory from, he got taken by the Sun People, by the Tusken Raiders. He's imprisoned by them slightly. He tries to escape a few times, stuff like that. He eventually manages to save a Tusken youngling, as he calls it, from some sort of Goro monster, if you know what I mean by that. Not Killer Instinct, Mortal Kombat, the character called Goro, 4-armed monster guy, that's what I'm referencing. And, it's just... It's an interesting little backstory of how the Tusken Raiders kind of just accepted Boba because Boba saved one of their young. And the fact that Boba presumably decided he'd live with them after they'd captured him for so long, I think says a lot about Boba as a character. He's very forgiving. He is very willing to be kind to people and to defend and to protect even those that have wronged him, which I think is a really nice character trait. And yeah, overall, like, I feel like in combination with what we saw of him in The Mandalorian, they've really done a good job of making him an actual character. After, he had 3 lines, I think, in the original trilogy, and then he's in the the holiday special, sorry, and then a little bit in episode 2 and a little bit in the Clone Wars. That's really it. We get to see a lot of, what kind of person he is, which I think is really interesting, especially when, we didn't get that much time with Jango to know what kind of character he was, and with Boba being a clone, we're kind of getting backstory for both, and with things like, was it Star Wars 1919, the Jango Fett game, sorry, getting cancelled, it's pretty good to be able to see, what kind of characters these guys are, because they are very integral to the Star Wars mythos, thanks to the Clone Wars and, things around that. Mandalorian culture is very important. The clones are very important. Obviously, they're based on Jango, and, Boba is a clone. It's a lot of interesting stuff. I'm really happy with the way that this show's going so far. I'm just not blown away by it, and that's perfectly fine. Not everything has to be great, and, coming out of Hawkeye, but also coming out of Doctor Who, I'm perfectly happy with something that's just okay, perfectly fine, because Doctor Who, the last series 13, was a train wreck, and Hawkeye I thought was fantastic, just with some pretty major issues, but seeing something like Book of Boba Fett, and it just being enjoyable, just something to, spend a bit of time watching and not hating what I'm watching, that's perfectly fine by me. But yeah, that's going to be it for this. I'm going to give that episode, let's say a 6 out of 10. It's nothing special, but it's enjoyable. If you're a fan of Star Wars, and more specifically, if you're a fan of Mandalorian culture and Boba Fett, you're going to enjoy it. But otherwise, that's going to be it for this review. So thanks for watching. Like, subscribe. It's also not a review. I need to stop saying that, because I do call these reviews a lot. It's a thoughts video. I'm going to review the entire series at some point. But yeah, thanks for watching. I hope to see you next time. And yeah, bye.